Hey guys, just before we get into it, we would like to acknowledge our podcast partners in Beyond Blue.
If you're feeling low, anxious, or need to talk to someone, please contact the people at Beyond Blue. Their phone number is 1300 224 636.
You can visit them on the website as well at www.beyondblue.org.au/get support. Enjoy the episode.
Thanks, guys.
Hello and welcome to the Lystics AFL Podcast. I'm your host, John Van Norden, and here with me as always, my best friend, Shawnee Lewis. Shawnee Lewis, how you doing this week, mate?
Going very well, thank you, John Van Norden. Things are going well, tracking well. It's probably a good time, not that he'll be listening, because he's a great friend like this, but maybe give a shout out to our friend Conan, who's celebrating his 45th birthday today. Happy birthday, Conan.
Yeah, he's a great man. He's getting on. He'll be the first one of our mates to crack the 50 barrier, but he's a good man and we love him. It's that season actually. It's my birthday on Tuesday, Cup Day. So and things are turning around in Victoria, starting to open. People everywhere today. There's a little bit of positivity in the air.
Yeah, it's nice to see smiles on people's faces, and
behind masks.
Yeah, behind masks. I mean, I guess you can kind of, what I say, you smile from your eyes as well. He definitely seeing people out and about and smiling, and definitely a lot of things to be positive about. So to Victoria, well done, congratulations, guys. We did it. We suppressed it. It's a lot to be proud of in there, and it wasn't easy, and a lot of people got to breaking point. The last probably 2 weeks were pretty rough. I don't know about you, John, but I'd certainly noticed a lot more angst the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
And not without reason, of course, but yeah, like it's we saw the power of sticking to the numbers and waiting until we got to the right point. And hopefully our reward is a COVID normal after Christmas, where we can manage this ongoing and open up the rest of the country and see our friends. I got lots of friends. I got family in Perth, and I got friends in Tasmania and Queensland, and and family in South Australia. So it'd be lovely to be able to see them all in the coming months. So hopefully we can open up Australia a little bit more. But yeah, well done Melbourne, well done Victoria. So got a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, we do, mate. And I think that as you said, it would be nice to think that across all of Australia we might be getting back to a level of somewhat normal, and we may be able to see our interstate, or I mean, in our case in Victoria, it still hasn't been opened up for country Victoria yet, so I can't go see most of my relatives. But that's all going to be changing over the next few weeks, and look, we've made it this far. I think that we're pretty happy to be coming out the other side. How have you been feeling from a mental health perspective, mate?
Yeah, look, been really good, mate. Like I said, I've probably had a different lockdown to a lot of people with the broken leg and everything. So I kind of wouldn't have been moving from the couch anyway. But yeah, look, everything's gone well. Big achievement today. I got back to site. So pretty much back on full duties at work, which is great. It's kind of nice to, in a weird way, feel whole again, if that kind of makes sense. But yeah, apart from that, everything's going well with the family. Entering into mid-spring now and heading towards summer, and the weather's starting to get nice, so able to take a little girl out for walks at night, which is awesome, and play in the garden and take the dogs out for a run, and get down to the beach. We only live 500-600 meters from the beach, so it's going really well. It's a great time of year to live where I live anyway, just because we are close to the beach, and they haven't quite packed out yet. So just getting down there at sunset and going for a walk and having the dogs on the lead is always good fun. So, how about you, mate? How's things? How's mental health and life? And
Yeah, good. I'm feeling relatively positive about things at the moment. I mean, it's all life always throws up its little challenges, but in general, I'm feeling pretty well covered, and I'm sort of looking forward to being able to do little things like see friends. And there's actually a prospect of us podcasting in the same room at some stage in the near future, which would be very exciting. So I'm all smiles at the moment, mate.
yeah, I think actually we can under the rules,
Yeah.
but I would just be your only visitor for the day.
You would, and you will be my only visitor for most days, so that's not a problem anyway for me. Um, but yeah, mate, I'm pretty pumped. We've been doing a good amount of podcasts recently, so I no complaints or qualms here. Just really looking forward to really looking forward to getting stuck in.
Yeah, and it's like, look, I mean, for the listeners, it's a great time of year. This is when we really love. It's obviously we've got a compressed trade period, we've got a draft period coming up, and we're still trying to get through list reviews. So it's all a bit over the shop at the moment. So stick with us and read the titles of the podcast, and you'll pick up what we're on about this time. But I think it's obviously trade radio has kicked off, and with the free agency contracts, I believe, open up in 2 days on Friday, and
Yep.
then trade period starts next Wednesday. So I guess we'll probably be interchanging between list reviews and then a trade and free agency podcast here and there, and then we'll do one leading into the draft as well. But yeah, there's lots of exciting stuff this year. Lots of interesting trades coming up, and I feel like Essendon is probably going to be the key for the whole trade period, and which would be good to kind of.
Which is worrying.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm a bit in two minds. I think there's a real good chance for Essendon to really just, do what they should have done a couple of years ago and just build the list. Take what you've got and build it properly. And I think what they'll come out the other side with is something pretty good. So, and it looks like they're in the market for what we've been crying out for them to draft the last few years, which is an inside midfielder. And the club we're about to talk about, they've tried to unsettle one of their players and drag him across to Tullamarine.
Yeah, the Western Bulldogs. And the Western Bulldogs are a super interesting club. And as you said, little attempts to sway players away like that are interesting as well. I'm sure we'll get to discuss it a bit later in the podcast when we talk trades. But looking at the Western Bulldogs as a whole, I mean, people sort of judge them based upon how they've performed since their premiership. But realistically, they were ahead of schedule then, and they're maybe a little bit behind schedule now. But if anything, I think that's only because they made some short-term trades at that time to try to capitalize on their position, thinking that they could maybe win another one. And now they're probably back more on track with where we thought they would be.
Yep. Yeah, it's a fair point. What was really interesting before we dig into the demographics was when I was looking at going through and doing the breakdown of the ages and the positions and stuff is I got a real sense that I was repeating Melbourne of last week, although slightly better, which was really kind of fascinating because I thought after Melbourne last week, I just thought, oh, there's no way another club would have the same as this, but the Dogs kind of do. So demographics wise, 20 average age is 24 years and 2 months, which is ninth in the AFL. Median 23 and a half, which is eighth in the AFL. So not too bad there. Average games 59.4, which is 12th overall. Median games 42, which is 4th overall. And then when we get into the depth chart, we start to see 4 key forwards, 4 key defenders, 15 general forwards, with only 4 of them being what you classify as a mid forward, 10 midfielders, just 2 recognised rucks, which I think we'll talk about later as well,
Yeah.
and 10 general defenders. So very much the depth chart looks similar to Melbourne, although Melbourne had slightly more midfielders and slightly more rucks and less general defenders. And demographically with the medians, their median games is very similar to Melbourne. The median age is a little bit younger than Melbourne's, which was probably pushed up by that. The Bulldogs, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but they've got a similar kind of band of players, 24 to 28 kind of thing, like Melbourne, but they've just got 2 or 3 less of them. So that's why the median age is a bit lower. But any takeaways from you from that?
I mean, there's the obvious takeaway, which is the rucks, but there's been something that we've been talking about with them for a while, so we can probably touch on it at the appropriate time in the podcast. I think that the amount of general forwards makes sense as well, just because of the way that they set up their midfield. They run a lot of what I would call midfielders through their forward line, and that sort of makes sense when you look at the spread. Other than that, it's what we see on the weekends. They're missing some key tools, and they've probably got too many of the same type, which is probably in this case general defenders and general forwards. But overall, it's not a shocking balance other than the rucks.
Yeah, and maybe 1 or 2 key position light for me.
It's light on height across the board.
Yeah. Key changes last year. Do you want to take us through them?
So badly. So the retirements were Dale Morris, Liam Picken, and Big Tom Boyd, and they delisted Fletcher Roberts and Lucas Webb. They were involved in some trades. So Josh Bruce, sorry, I just got a croaky throat. Josh Bruce made his way to the club for picks 31 and 51. Alex Keith and a 2020 third round pick joined the club for a 2020 second round pick and pick 45. And they went and drafted Cody Waitman with 15 and Louis Butler with pick 53, or Lewis Butler, depending on how you want to pronounce that. But I prefer Louis. All in all, I think that it was a trade period or an off-season filled with promise based upon the acquisitions of Keith and Bruce filling really key roles for the Western Bulldogs. Cody Waitman filling potentially a role in that forward line, and the sort of barnstorming finish to 2019 sort of had people feeling like they were going to be a lock for the top 4. But yeah, it just didn't really happen.
Yeah. It was one of those. They were probably one of the lower list turnovers for last year. Only 5 players out. They obviously brought another one in after Louis Butler, which was in the 60s. Riley Garcia, maybe.
Oh yeah, they did.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess that list stability, coupled with, as you said, the barnstorming finish, you kind of thought that they were set up for a good year. But yeah, they just we'll talk about the good, bad, the ugly, but there's just something that's just not quite working. And they seem to, the last 2 years, they've done the same thing where they've found a gear when they needed to, and then knocked out of finals first round kind of thing. So key players now: Bont, McRae, Norton, Caleb Daniel, and Josh Dunkley. For the future, Bont, McRae, and Norton. Bailey Smith to overtake Caleb Daniel, which you could argue he probably already has. And Josh Dunkley is in there. I guess there's a bit of tongue in cheek, and he's replaced by Tim English. Dunkley obviously was playing in the ruck a bit this year because English was moved forward for whatever reason. But yeah, the Dogs to be a dominant force are going to need Tim English to become the player a lot of us think he can be, and I think he showed it in a stretch of 3 or 4 games this year where he played really well. But again, he's just still picking up size, still learning the craft, and he's only 22, I think. So still got time on his side.
It's really for me got two key years coming up to put on size. Because I mean, after that he's 25, and he's getting into what should be the peak of his career, and he can't be affording to still be building size at that point. He needs to have all of the weight that he'll need to be able to carry him forward for the next 7-8 years.
I think it's really important. Like, so we all Max Gawn, obviously, being as good as he is, it's worth remembering that it took him, 6 seasons when you include a knee Rico to become Max Gawn, if that makes sense. Like, before he of the end of that 6th season, he kind of took the number 1 ruck mantle, and like from probably round 10 onwards of that year, and then it was the following year when he was kind of his, I think the equivalent for Tim English would be next year for when Max really just took his game to the level expected. And so I kind of look at English and I think has that huge scope that he's got. It's next year or the year after, like you're saying, that's when it needs to all click, and it needs to be not a 4-game patch, but 17 out of 22 games he needs to play like that.
Yeah, no, completely agree, mate. That's sort of where I sit with him as well. Looking at their best 22, so from the back line, Easton, Wood, Keith, and Daniel. On the half back line, JJ, probably Cordy, but Gardner played that role a lot this year. And Crozier on the half back line. Across the middle, Bailey Smith, Jackson McRae, and Lockie Hunter. Across the half forward line, Ed Richards, Astronaut Norton, and Lipinski, and full forward line, McLean, Bruce, and Wallace, with English, Bont, and Dunkley in the middle. And the making up the 22 on the interchange was Libba, Bailey Williams, Taylor Duray, and Vandermeer. I mean, when you look at the 22, it looks all right. That's generally what I think. It's just, for some, there was a lot of things that happened this year, but it just didn't click. It didn't quite click in the way that you need a 22 to every single week. And I think one of the things that I said would be telling about the Dogs, this was last year or maybe at the end of last season coming into this year, was whether the Dogs would become a team where they beat everyone that they should, and they lost to some teams that are above them, but made finals that way. And they still weren't able to transform into that side where you could rely on them week in, week out to beat the sides that they should beat.
Yeah. And it's probably been the knock on them for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Is they lose the games they probably shouldn't. Well, they lose some of them, and they win some pretty incredible matches because they just, find something. And their best football is, top
very good,
top 4 kind of level. Like that's how good they can be, but it's not what they do on a week-to-week basis, which is really disappointing. Like, even I'm just having a look through this year's results to see anything that stands out. Like, touched up by Carlton by 50 odd points, just scraping over the line against the Suns. But then they'll. Yeah, so then
it was a better year in that. It was a better year in that sense, but it's games that you need to win in order to be a great side. So they lost to St Kilda by 39 at the start of the year, and then lost to them by 3 in the first final. Look, I think the Dogs definitely improved in terms of that level of consistency, but they still weren't able to take it to that next level that they really need to. They were still reliant on a streak of wins at the end of the year to sort of bring them into finals. They were sitting outside that 8 for a little while there. And there's still, you still never feel sure about what they're going to bring. And you sort of feel like it's going to be up to what team turns up on the day.
Yeah, and so it's a lot like Melbourne, effectively in that way.
Yeah,
The on your best day you could beat Richmond. On your worst day you'll lose to Adelaide.
yeah,
And it really just look, you're right. This year they probably just going over those games. They look like there was probably only one or two that they probably should have won, but the rest of them they kind of did win, and then they lost the ones to the guys that finished above them. Really, so
yeah,
you'd say this year is probably a bit more consistent. But yeah, it's really kind of like looking at their side, and thinking about what is really missing, like in the glaring holes, and it really is that key position centre half back where Aaron Norton should be,
yeah,
and Josh Shackey should be up the in if he development wise, if he had to come on, he could be in that centre half forward role for them.
yeah,
And then, but you look around the ground, they got some really nice players, but again, like that you're not overly worried about. You're not overly worried about kind of McLean or Richards or Lipinski, but you're really
yeah.
worried about a guy like Hunter. Like, Libba doesn't worry too much. Yeah, there's some it's a bit the
It's
same.
it's almost. I even think it's more weird than the Melbourne sort of makeup, because when I sort of look at the Dogs, I would say that with all of those players, I am worried that they'll have a good game. That's what I'm worried about with every single one of them, because I think they all have upside. I just think that they're all inconsistent. Not like there's not a reliable output from a Lipinski. People were sort of talking about him being a really consistent midfield forwarder this year, and he didn't deliver that. McLean isn't reliable as a regular 20 disposal, one goal player from the sort of forward line, and I know he's injured now, so that's not going to matter so much. But Richards, another one, you
Streaky.
can't rely. Streaky, they're streaky. They're streaky. JJ's streaky. A lot of these sort of players have some really good games and some really average games, and that's sort of the opposite to the Melbourne problem, which I think is they have a lot of players that are maybe just around average, which means that everything has to be going really well with everyone else in order for them to win.
Yeah,
But they don't have the stock. These guys probably thought they had the stock because their players have upside, but they don't bring it every week, which probably means they don't.
yeah, yeah.
They just don't
It's a
have it.
fair point.
Yeah.
The good.
Yeah, I mean the good is that they're a relatively good age profile. When you sort of look at that, I mean we can work that out with any team when you sort of talk through their key players for now and into the future. And when there's a fair chunk of your key players both in both categories, so in their case Bont, McRae, Norton, and you can make an argument for Daniel and Dunkley, who are all in their key players now, also being there in the future, you feel pretty well prepared. You feel like, okay, then this team has at least another 5 years. Like there's at least another 5 years to build around Bontempelli, around McRae, around any of these guys, and actually hold those players to develop together. It's just probably that they're at because they're at that right age, they should also be performing a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. It's the hard balance between being at the right age, but then not quite being that consistency each week.
Yeah,
And I guess probably one of the positives for Dogs fans is, like, I was looking at their list, and if you look at their all their players kind of 25 and above, which is about 16. So that's, from kind of Bont up their list, with the exception of maybe two players, like all of them are best 22 players. Like now, sorry, so it's 15 players. Dixon's retired, but with the exception of Jackson Trengove and Lin Jong, the rest of the guys there are all playing best 22 players, which I think is fantastic to see on a list. So like that's 13 of your top 15 age players on the list are
they're there for a
playing
reason.
Yeah.
It probably means you're turning over the list quickly enough. Like once players look like they're not going to make it, you move them on, and the players that do make it stay, and that means that they're playing.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to manage a team.
Yeah, I think that was a real big positive. So that's been good from a list turnover perspective. I think this year the good, obviously getting Jamara Ugle-Hagan as a freebie with no effort, and it's a bit of a joke, but hey, take it while you can.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there'll be some people that would take issue with the no effort component to what you're saying, but I understand what you mean in terms of the you don't have to do a whole lot to get a very good reward, and it's the same investment that others are also making, but you sort of luck out just depending on who is available in your area and where they're being developed.
Yeah, well, I mean, and look, people can take issue with the no effort, but it really is like the whole intent of NGA academies is to bring in more
new talent, new areas that wouldn't typically be exposed to football.
Yeah, and what you've got is a kid from where is he from? He's like out the west somewhere. Like he's out in the country. I can't remember exactly where he's from, but yeah. So he's from that area, and just because he's from that area, he comes from a multicultural background, and he falls into your academy, and like literally, they haven't gone and found him at age 12, brought him across into football, pulled him from another sport. In terms of development, you've run a few development camps, you've got him in, you've sat back and gone, oh, look how good this kid is, and we'll take him, thanks.
Yeah. You're right, and I mean I think it gets harder when the players relocate. That sort of makes the whole thing harder because I mean he's going to Scotch College, plays for the Oakley Chargers. Like his development is being taken care of by Scotch College and the Oakley Chargers. That he would be getting that development regardless of whether the club was involved with him or not.
Exactly, he would be an AFL player.
Yeah,
and he would likely be a top. He'd be a top five selection.
Yep.
If it wasn't for even with or without the dogs. So
yep.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
mate. We talk about this every single year. Something's got to be done about it. They're trying to change it a little bit, but reality is that at the very least, the top 20 should be off limits. Anyone that comes from a father, like a father or a mother. I mean, in this case, probably because of the age profile of players, it's unlikely to be a mother. But if you've had a parent play AFL, you should not be eligible for a Next Generation Academy. Because you're not new talent, you're going to play football. That's sort of happening with Port this year, where Adelaide are getting the son of a Port Adelaide Magpies legend, and I think he might have even played for Port Adelaide himself. So it's that kind of stuff is frustrating. It'll all be ironed out. But yeah, man, there are some serious holes that we could have identified from day one of free agency and day one of NGA academies that just should have never been built into the systems.
And I think the thing as well here is it's not just the Bulldogs getting a gimme this year. Like Collingwood's getting Reef McInnes, which is a fairly big gimme on top of Isaac Quainer, and I can't remember how to pronounce his name. Bosunawagi.
R2.
Yeah,
just R2. Easier.
Yeah, so they had those two kids come through as in the NGA, and they're going to get Reef McInnes this year. Essendon's got a couple of kids there as well. So it's not just the Dogs. This is just probably going to be the highest profile one. And it's different to Sydney. It's different to Isaac Heaney. And it's different to Callum Mills. So there's a lot more scrutiny around this in that, has the NGA actually done what it's meant to do? Or has it just allowed someone to zone off?
Yeah, it's just luck of the draw.
Yeah, exactly. So also good, they've got 2 consecutive years in finals, which is also very good. But moving on to the bad, the flip side of that 2 years in finals has been both years they've kind of surged into finals and scraped in, and then exited rather quickly. So it's been a bit of a reality check both years, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, it sort of shows why it's important to be better during the year, like as in why your club needs to be better, because you really need to secure a top 4, top 6 position to give yourself the best chance at making finals. And look, teams have done it. Dogs have shown that. Teams have done it from 7th. So you can sneak in and have a good run and be lucky. But at the end of the day, the best portion of teams come from the top 4 that win flags. So
Yep.
you need to really be fighting. Once you've made the top 8 for 2 years, you need to be putting that away and going, great, we can make the top 8. Now let's make the top 4.
Yep.
Let's transform into a side that people are scared of every single week.
Spot on. That's exactly what their target needs to be. You've got 2 years of finals. Now it has to be finishing 4th, 3rd, 2nd, or 1st. Like that's got to be the new goalpost. Other bad, I think we mentioned it before. There's a bit like Melbourne last week. There's quite a few players at kind of 24 who middling out, or when I say 24 plus, middling out and not or not being played, I guess, is probably the other way to look at it. So we're looking at Trengove, Lin Jong, who, has a lot of talent, but has just through injury probably just lost a step of his skills, and just when I've seen him play recently, just hasn't quite looked the same. Ben Kavara, can't figure out how he wasn't getting a game for a lot of this year, and then when he did, he looked all right. But again, if you're not playing him, at 24 years old, why is he on your list? Will Hayes, Bailey Dale, Rourke Smith, Billy Gowers, these are guys that float in and out of your side. They fit somewhere between kind of 20 and 28 on your list, but they're all 24 plus in age. And the question is, are they better off playing Kavara or Waitman or Billy Gowers or I don't know,
anyone.
Pat Lipinski, or Latham Vandermeer, as another one. So I guess
I mean, we didn't have Ryan Gardner in that mix as well, but Gardner played a lot of games this year, but is certainly in that middling part of that list where you just sort of feel like, what are they doing?
He's 23, isn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, still, he's around that middling age bracket where you're starting to have to move them on a little bit earlier. I mean, I understand him a little bit more. They still have gaps in their key position, so they brought in Keith in the off season, which was a good acquisition. I think everyone could recognise that, but it falls away very quickly after that. I mean, Cordy. He's sort of the Oscar McDonald for the Western Bulldogs. He's tall. He'll play a role, but that's all he'll sort of ever be. There's not much after that or before that. There's not much developing. I don't really know. Like, they got Gardner, who played a lot of games because of that lack of depth this year, and there weren't a lot of great games either. So there's definitely some holes there.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really kind of a tough one because, like, to me, uh, they would be better off moving. And look, I'm adamant that Norton is a defender, but I know plenty of Dogs people think he's a forward, and he is. He can play forward very well. I just think he's a better defender than he is forward. Um,
Yep.
and I kind of look at it and go, Norton and Keith on the back line, and then the year the Dogs won the flag, they had Tom Boyd up forward. That was it.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have a centre half forward really, and I feel like the way they play, they could almost get away with having Wallace or someone like that playing a centre half forward role, or
Yeah.
even playing Bont there and letting him roam. Like there's a way around it. I just think there's more value in getting Norton behind the ball um, than there
Yeah,
is
you're right,
having him front. So
You're right, mate. I mean, the way that you can do it is that you put Dunkley into the ruck and English at centre half forward, and throw Norton back, and problem
yeah,
solved. I mean, that was um,
what's in the
another
ugly?
bad. Yeah, I mean, it's in the ugly. So we'll go into the ugly. Is that what what was that? Like, I don't know if he was injured. I don't think they came out after the season and said that he was, but that some of the setups that they had this year with ruck contests and ruck setups and English going periods of 10 to 15 minutes on the ground without attending a ruck contest. I did not get it. I don't think that it's good for his development. I think that even if he's not up to rucking full games out, the solution is play a second ruck.
Yeah,
You drafted Jordan Sweet for that reason. If you list team haven't done a good enough job, go find another ruck. Like, go do something to build up that position if it's truly a gap for you, but don't just leave him to the wolves and then put him in front or behind the ball. Just play him in his position and let him get better.
yeah, and don't sacrifice Josh Dunkley.
Don't sacrifice Dunkley.
And this is a part of this conversation is potentially there's talk that Dunkley might want to leave, and his center, what was it? His center bounce attendance has dropped 30 something percent this year. Um, and when you subtract out the ones where he won a hit out, like he contested, like it drops another few percentage points again. And
Yeah,
and it's just like, you've got it's a bit like Melbourne with Angus Brayshaw. Like,
yeah.
he's best around the ball. Get him around the ball. He's not a mid forward. He is he can rest forward, yes, but he's most damaging to you when he's standing next to Jack McRae in the middle of the ground.
Completely,
Um,
mate. And I mean, he's obviously seen that Tom Bell Chambers is retired and that there might be a ruck opening available at the Bombers. But I completely agree with you that there with. I mean, I think this with every single position though, and it's not the way the Dogs play. I mean, if we're being fully real about it, why like the questions that we have are why is Norton not in the position that he was drafted to play? Why is Ed Richards on the half forward flank rather than the half back flank? Why is Dunkley being played as a ruck and forward rather than a midfielder? Why does Libba and McLean get extended times in the deep forward line when both of them are mids and on ballers? Like, there is a lot of deck shuffling that we don't understand with this team.
yeah,
And it's not to say that a lot of it isn't for reasons that we should understand better, but it is honestly with other clubs, it is so much clearer why moves happen. It is not clear why so many moves happen with the Dogs. And I think that supporters sometimes feel that from Bevo and the selection committee as well, as just why is this happening? It doesn't look like it makes sense, and then on the weekend we watch it and it didn't make sense. So why are we doing this?
yeah, exactly. And that's where you get to. Like I understand that playing Norton forward of the ball and what he gives forward of the ball, but at the same time, like, are you cutting off your nose to spite your face? you know,
Yeah, you are.
like, because at the end of the day, if you're coming up against Richmond, who have Lynch and Rewald, you're going to put Keith is probably going to play on the deepest one, which would be Jack Rewald.
Very well. Yep.
And then you're going to play Gardner for majority of this year on Lynch, or you could put Norton on Lynch, and forward of the ball, you're giving yourself the best chance to nullify those two threats.
Yep.
And then forward of the ball, because on the ground they're pretty good. Like
Yep.
Easton Wood, Caleb Daniel, Hayden Crozier, Jason Johannesson, like good players. And they can throw a few more guys back there. Like they can get Jiraiya back. They can get, and, they can get the ball moving. And then all of a sudden that forward line's a lot more of a threat. But, playing, and Norton has his game where he kicks 4 and everyone goes, look how good he is. But, I mean, I don't know. It just baffles me, and it will continue to baffle me, and I'm not going to pretend I understand it, but sometimes we don't have to. And at the end of the day, they did it. They won a flag doing it, and, all kudos because they deserved it.
They did, and that's sort of where it always comes back to, isn't it? That Bevo has a flag and we don't. So let's see if he can continue to do it. I think that there are some people that are getting fed up with it, but let's see. Realistically, there's going to be a great challenge this year with Ugelhagen coming into the side. Maybe he won't be in the side as much this year, but really, what's that structure going to look like when you add him to the mix? You're going to play Bruce, or like I probably would play Bruce, but move Norton back. But there's a bit to still be worked out there.
Yep. Onto the off contracts. I'll read them out and you cut and delist them. Really, the only one that's happened from the Dogs is Tory Dixon has retired.
Yeah.
So
and there was one other, wasn't there? Lockie Young will go to another club. He'll be signed.
That's still to play out. That's still to play out. But
that's a mark. Like I'll mark that against him as well. So that we can...
So it's probably worth for the listeners, like the machinations behind what North are trying to do. So Lockie Young is a rookie listed player, and he's been on the list for 2 years. And when he gets to the 3rd year, if he's not offered a main list spot, if he's offered a rookie deal to stay on the rookie list, and another club wants to offer him a main list spot, he can transfer as what is essentially a delisted free agent. So no compensation, no nothing. It's just a straight swap, or straight leave, free agency acquisition. And it has happened before. I believe I'm pretty sure it's the first ever free agency acquisition was Josh Jenkins to Adelaide via this mechanism from Essendon.
Yeah.
So it's that's what has been proposed. Now there's some debate about, because the Dogs may have come back and offered him a main list spot with a deal, and therefore North have to trade, but the AFL's got to sort through that.
Yep.
But yeah, in any case, if he is off, hopefully it's via a trade for the Dogs. Otherwise, I probably would have been giving him a 2-year deal because he's one of your key position depth players.
Yeah.
So
no, totally agree, mate.
All right, so we'll start at the top, mate. Ben Cavara, what are you doing?
1 year or delist. If you're not going to be playing in best 22, then delist him. Because you might as well play that not best 22 role with Wakeman, rather than on Cavara.
Waitman, not Wake.
Sorry.
That's all right, mate. Billy Gowers.
Delist.
Yep, don't disagree there.
Yeah.
Bradley Lynch.
I don't know what to do with Brad Lynch. He's a depth player. 5 years. It looked okay at some stages. I'd see if there was any interest in him for a trade. Otherwise, I would delist or give him one or maybe a rookie. I really don't know with Brad Lynch.
Yep. I guess in that situation, I'd probably lean towards delist.
Yeah.
When you're kind of stuck in two minds, it's probably better to. Probably one thing worth noting is that given the likely price for Jamara that they're going to pay, potentially they may delist less this year, but they may delay re-signing players for a little while, just to see how many of their draft picks they can use.
Yeah.
If the bid comes at number one, I'll walk through the scenarios a bit later, but yeah, basically, they could potentially pretty much have one pick in this year's draft unless they trade back in and that sort of thing. So
Yep.
some of these decisions may change based on that, whatever happens there. So next up is Buku Karmas.
Yeah, I'd give him 1 year. I mean, I really like him still. I know that he's still building fitness for AFL level, but he's definitely key position defender depth for them, and starting to develop. So definitely worth a year. If they know more than we do, though, he hasn't played a game yet, so maybe delist him and re-rookie, depending on how that goes.
Yeah, I think isn't he on the rookie list?
I can't remember whether they promoted him in his first year. I couldn't find an article on it, but I have a feeling that he may have been promoted or extended, something of that nature.
I think he was
So
extended. I've got him marked here as on the rookie list.
yeah, I just couldn't. Is that from the Dogs website or is that from?
No, that's from another one.
Okay, yeah, no, I honestly can't remember, and I'm not certain because I didn't know whether you could extend a player, like offer them a 2-year rookie contract. I thought maybe they have to be extended a year on year, but
No, I
that's
think you
okay.
can. Yeah, you can offer him 2
Yeah.
years on rookie. But all right, we'll bunch the next three together because it's the same advice. Callum Porter, Fergus Green, and Jackson Trengove.
Delist.
Yeah, yeah. So Jackson Trengove, a bit like last week with Mitch Brown. Potentially, you keep him for depth, but I mean he's not playing. Yeah, probably best just to delist. Jordan Sweet.
Yeah, you got to give him a contract because otherwise you have no rucks. There's depth at all, so probably re-rookie him.
Yep. That'll be his last year on the rookie list.
Yeah.
Lin Jong, restricted free agent.
Yeah, he's been there for a while, hasn't he? Just delist for me.
But
Yeah.
restricted free agent, that means he's coin.
Yeah, his last deal was.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, delist for me. They're going to be happy with that, I think.
Okay. Matty Suckling.
Probably still worth a 1-year deal for me. Plays a role there. And yeah, he's getting older, but the Dogs don't have many people to replace him yet. So yeah, 1 year.
Yep. Rourke Smith.
I'd probably give him 1 year. He's playing regular footy towards the end of the year. He's had some serious injuries early in his career, so he's potentially still worth a year before you either look at what this longer term structure is. Potentially he's one of those players that always gets 1 year, or you get him to be a regular best 22 player and he's worth 2 to 3 years for the security, and he'll be cheap because he probably won't have that many other suitors.
Yep, I don't mind that. Ryan Gardner.
Most people know how I feel about Ryan Gardner. I don't think that he's very good, and I think that he should be delisted. It's not sorry. It's that's always not fair commenting purely on someone's ability. He doesn't look like he's up to the level that the Western Bulldogs need him to be. You could maybe offer him a rookie spot just for depth in that key position area, but for me, I would take a punt on an untried player rather than him.
Yep, I'd probably lean towards re-rookie for one more just to give him depth. Sam Lloyd.
1 year for me. Still plays a role when he's in the team.
Yep. Taylor Juraya.
Yeah, I'd probably give him a 1+1. Like just with trigger extensions, he's older than I thought. And
28.
He's 28 or 29. So I'd give him the offer, the potential to extend, but he's probably not going to be there longer term. And he needs to be playing regular footy, so it should be a games trigger clause.
Yep. And Will Hayes.
Yeah, maybe 1 year. There's a lot of players here. I mean, I always find it hard. I want to axe everybody. Um, that's my trick of happiness. So probably 1 year, see what he can do. But yeah, I think he's got a way to go before he makes his name as a regular best 22 player.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I'm probably leaning towards D-list on him. So, okay, so that's the contract's done. What's missing?
I mean, we've touched on this earlier when we were looking at this. One of the easier ones to work out. Clearly, ruck depth. They should have been playing two rucks with the way that they were playing this year. The way they were playing English, they needed ruck depth. They needed ruck support, and they weren't playing it, and it really hurt them. They probably also need key position players in general. I mean, that what we were just saying with ruck depth would be alleviated if they had a ruck forward like a Sean McKernan type of player. And I mean, they used to play that with Trengove, and they had other players go through that with Jordan Roughhead. But really, they need somebody that's gonna play deep forward and be able to chop out in the ruck so that they can play a regular structure. They need to adapt towards that quickly.
Yes, yeah. I also think there's scope in their list for a kind of 190 centimeter forward, which is I guess where Hannon comes in. I feel like a lot of their mid-sized forwards are midfielders, not so much forward craft players. So
Yeah,
even though Mitch Wallace is developing his forward craft quite well, I still, yeah, there's not a lot of natural forwards playing forward for them. So I think that can also make it quite difficult for the key forwards because from what I've watched with the Dogs, and I watched them a fair bit this year, was that when they were all in the forward line, they ran into each other a lot.
yeah,
But when like Wallace was one out, it was fine. And so yeah, I think having a couple more natural forwards will who are used to playing in the forward line, that'll give them a better flow between the players. So as Waitman comes on, they bring in a guy like Hannon at that 190 centimeter lead up. You've got, if they're playing Norton and Bruce, or Bruce and Jamara, or Norton and Jamara, whatever that combination looks like, and then they've only really got kind of one or two Wallaces, Richards, Libbers, that sort of thing down there, rather
yeah,
than having kind of three or four.
yeah.
So, yeah, definitely think there's some scope there for that as well. Trade bait wise, if they can get more points trading pick 12 back for a pair of 20s picks or something, that would certainly be advantageous to them. Next year's 2021 first round pick I've put here as well as trade bait.
Yep.
And my reasoning is precisely what GWS did. Because they don't have their own first round pick next year, effectively the points will get taken off their second round pick.
Yep.
And then you can trade back in.
And then you can
draft.
trade back in. Yeah. What a joke, right? But might as
Yeah.
well take advantage of it if you know that's the rules.
I would, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, trading out your pick 12 for more points, that's exactly what Sydney, Collingwood, quite a few other players have done. So, I wouldn't. It's a known advantageous loophole now, and if you created enough list spots with delistings, you can carry 4 or 5 picks into the draft pretty comfortably.
Do you reckon? Do you reckon there's? I mean, when we're talking trade bait, we're also talking about some other players with injuries like Toby McLean. We're talking about Josh Dunkley, who's clearly been talked about. Do you think that they have enough bait to get even pick one or pick two from Adelaide, depending on if they hold pick two?
Yeah, so this was an interesting one that I think we discussed. Was that if Josh Dunkley was to go, he would command a very high price from Essendon.
Yep.
Minimum would be pick 6 plus another pick,
Yeah.
another first round pick, and I'd be pushing for Essendon's 2021 first round pick. I would then probably go to pick 1 or pick 2, whoever's got whichever one. You may not get pick 1 just for the commercial side of things, but
Yep.
definitely pick 2 would be there for the right price, especially North was pick 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they still have pick 2. That's the sort of challenge, is if Adelaide gets it via back channels on a bid.
Yeah, well, that's another story altogether. But let's assume that North has pick 2. I think North would be open to trading if you're able to get like a pick 6 and either a future first or throw in your pick 12. I'm not sure points wise what that adds up to, but it'd come. I mean, pick 6 and pick 12 for pick 2.
It'd be around a mark. It'd definitely be around the mark. You can do the calculation another time, but I think that would be. I mean, maybe you have to pay a little bit overs to extract pick 2, even if it's close on points, just to make sure you secure it. And you might want to wait until draft night to do it, because it'll be heartbreaking to go in with pick 2 and then have a bid on Jamara with pick 1, which once you get to pick 2, if you don't have pick 1, once you get pick 2, it's actually incentivizes Adelaide to bid, because they could end up with Jamara in that case.
Yeah.
If they don't want to attract a bid. Like, I don't think that would happen, but it's just better to keep picks until the last minute.
Yeah. So just to give value wise, pick 2 is 2,500 points, and pick 6 and pick 12, for argument's sake, is just over 3,000 points. So it's significantly higher value, to the tune of an extra second round pick.
Yeah, and if you sweetened it further with like a swap of your future third for North's future fourth, like sweetening it with just little things like that, where it's only really going to be 10 picks different sometime in the 40s, but it'll mean even more points is a win. I think that would do it. And for Western Bulldogs, something like that makes a lot of sense, because you just go, this is the last year that we attack the draft, and we're going to get probably the best 2 key position players that we can possibly get.
Well, you could potentially, if you could get 2, you could take Denver Granger Barras, solve your defensive issues, and you could take Jamara at pick 3 when he gets bid on with that next
Tilthorpe,
pick.
mate. You would go Tilthorpe all day long. You would get a ruck forward that could completely work with English in the ruck, chop him out effectively, and sit deep forward and allow you to swing North to the back line.
Yeah, I would do that. I just don't think Bevo will do it.
True. Yeah, he's too tall. He would use this as an opportunity to draft Smalls, probably.
Will Phillips or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or Tom Powell. Yeah, those are the players we're thinking about.
Yeah. Current picks?
I mean, there's enough there. I mean, the current picks are 12, 36, and 48. So to them, it's really just points. And that's the reason why you're talking about moving pick 12 back, is potentially trying to access some more points. You've also got the idea of just copping the points hit this year. So using deliberately going into deficit and trading advantageously. So I don't know what that ends up looking like, but it's either a super high pick this year or some players. So there's a few things that they can do with that. I think there's enough trade bait to suggest that the Western Bulldogs could be an interesting player in the trade period.
Yeah, absolutely. They could, I guess, depending on how they want to attack it, they could go in looking at the points from their draft picks at the moment. And if I'll just run through the scenarios, I got them down a bit lower, but effectively, if the bid comes at pick 1 for Jamara, they'll have to get 2,400 points, which means that on the picks they have available at the moment, they will basically be 328 points in deficit, which is a pick in the 40s. And so next year, basically, that would come off their first round pick, which is the incentive there about trading that 2021 first round. If a bid comes at pick 2, they'd lose pick 12 and pick 36. They would move to the back of the draft to pick 73 area. And then pick 48 would slide to pick 68. So it's almost at the back of the draft. So they almost lose all their points there. And then if the bid comes at pick 3, which is, kind of the last pick we see it coming, they will basically lose pick 12 and pick 36 to the back of the draft, but then pick 48 only slides a couple of spots, like 1 or 2 spots. So you can see the value there for them of trying to get the bid down a couple of spots. And potentially, and that's why if they can get pick 2, and then if I was them, they got pick 2 and they traded out their 2021 first round pick.
Yeah.
They would then just wear whatever the costs next year.
Yep, I agree with that. That's me. This is what happens when you're upstairs in a warm room. The yawning gets to you. But I mean, I would do that exact thing. As we sort of said, I would chase an early pick. You just have to make sure that you can get it early enough. So it has to be pick 2 at the latest, and it's just about how willing Adelaide are to play that game.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, for me, if someone traded into pick 2 to try to avoid a bid on a player that's worth pick 1, I would probably screw them and place the bid at 1 and say it didn't go high enough. Or if you really want pick 1, what are you going to give to us? Otherwise, we'll bid, which I think is probably reason why they need to go for 1 and really overpay. But the potential upside for doing that for them is quite big.
Yeah.
The other thing that they can do is just cop it, just not make moves. Like, as in, use their existing picks, maybe a little bit more. The bid will probably come at 2. They'll cover it and not worry. And just go, man, we got lucky that we got probably the best player in this draft for our later picks.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So they're in a real winning situation. And it really just comes down to can they maximise it in some way, I guess. But yeah, I think in terms of trades, Mitch Hannon is obviously being talked about. Well, I think we spoke about him last week. I personally pick 48 would get it done for me. But I think we said it last week. It just if the contract they're putting in front of Hannon is significant or decent, I guess, then the D's might ask for 36, but I think 48 should be enough to get it done.
Yeah. You reckon it gets done with this year's pick? I feel like it'll be a future.
Yeah, look, but I think if you're going into the future, the D's might try and get you a second rounder.
I agree. I think that it'll be like a future second for Hannon, a future 4th or something of that nature, or Hannon and one of the D's picks this year to give them points this year.
That could be a bit like the Sam Frost deal.
Yeah, it'd be something like that for me, because I would not be trading out 48 just based upon its points value for the Dogs this year. They need all those picks.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's probably a fair type of arrangement. Like the D send back a 4th or a 3rd rounder, or something like that. The couple, I'll come back to this next one, but Sean McKernan would have been someone. I think he sounds like he's going to St Kilda, but he's one that I think John mentioned before would have been a good fit and probably to the same kind of token of player is Nathan Vardy as well. Just some ruck assistance that's of decent quality for Tim English.
Yep.
And then also potentially even Tom Hickey, although he's kind of number 2 ruck for West Coast. So given Nick Nat's injury history, I can't really see West Coast letting him go. But if they really want to throw the dice this year and maybe trade out another future pick, maybe a second or something, and go after a kid like Sam Hayes at Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
I reckon because he really is a true forward ruck. Like, can play ruck if he has to, but he also has a lot of forward craft. So I think he really fits. He really fits what they need. And if you can't trade up to take a Riley Tilthorpe type, then Sam Hayes isn't a bad alternative.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Hayes is a good alternative for any club that wants a ruck, and I think all of them need ruck depth at that age bracket. So he could be an interesting player to move if he does move in this off season,
Yeah,
given the Port Adelaide are pretty set in that area.
but I do think Port will put a high value on his head because they rate
Yeah,
him
so
very highly.
yeah, so do I. I think that he's probably worth a second round pick or an early third round pick in this draft. I mean, I rated him higher than where he went in his own draft.
Yeah, I know that was crazy that year.
Yeah, but yeah, he's definitely a player that should be on people's radars.
Yeah,
It's going to be, I mean, what do they do? It's going to be really interesting.
yeah. Look, I probably fall into uh, the kind of take what you've got, and I
Yeah.
would like get the Hannon deal done. And if you're not going to go after anyone else, I would just I'd take 12, 36, and 48 into the draft and hope that a bid comes at pick 3.
Yeah.
That's probably how I would play it. I don't see a need for them to be overly aggressive to put it all on this year, and I don't think they've done that previously. And next year's draft is looking pretty good.
Yep.
It's looking like another, pretty good quality. Maybe not quite 2018 quality, but close to 2018.
Yeah, it's looking probably like a what I would call a standard draft pool. Whereas the last year, this year are probably below standard. 2018 was one of the best drafts we'll see.
Yeah,
This is probably just like a standard draft again.
yeah. I mean, that's fair, fair assessment there. So, I mean, I would probably go in wherever the bid comes, it comes, and then I would then if they want to get back into the draft, if there's a player that's attracting them, use some of those future picks. I mean, if they've already traded out a second, maybe they use a third to get in the third round or something like that. Or take a few late punts at the end of the draft in the 60s if they want to. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're getting the best player in this draft, so just enjoy it. You didn't finish last to get him as well, so
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the same belief, mate. Like I think that you just got to go fully one way or the other, which is you have to just let your picks this year do the talking, take Jamara and enjoy, get Hannon, and you've got a couple of pieces, or go the opposite, which is trade next year's future, trade your own first, trade your own second, trade heaps, just get rid of all of your assets and go up as high as you possibly can, and get 2 jets and use that as your strategy. But just do one or the other. I don't think there's an in between here where the Dogs end up with a pick 7 or a couple of future picks or something like that. It's just move it all on, and or don't do anything with it. And I mean, it's hard to say. We're probably at the end of the episode already where we do our final words, and the Dogs are one of the clubs that I find the hardest to give final words to because it's not so much big list moves. It's much more tactical. It's cover your glaring blind spots. As in ruck, key position depth. But other than that, you just need more time. Need more time. Need to play people in roles for longer that they're better suited to, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yep, yeah, I tend to agree. I think my notes were to stop being cute with the game plans. I just think, like playing, Sean Grigg might have been a premiership ruckman for Richmond, but there's no reason to to think that that's still going to keep working. Even Richmond have moved away from that tactic. So
and just on that, he was a premiership second ruckman behind Toby Nankervis, who is a fridge.
Yeah.
And was playing bulk minutes, not like English playing 40% ruck time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I guess just stop being cute with the game plans is kind of what I put here. I would like to see, personally, I'd like to see Norton sent back and Jamara played at centre half forward. But then again, you could easily send Josh Bruce back if you really had to. I mean, he did start his career as a defender. If you're only going to come out of the draft with Jamara, you need to get more quality in your centre half back line. If next year, if Gardner and Cordy are playing more than kind of 17, 18 games as your centre half backs or full backs or holding down one of the key posts effectively, I think the Dogs are in the same position, and that's really not where they should be. And then obviously they need the players 18 to 26 on the list to really start coming on. So those middling players that in the delisting section we kind of said some of these guys need to move on now, but then the other sorts on your list. So the Pat Lipinski needs to step up, Latham Vandermeer to build his consistency, Ed Richards to really develop into the player we think he can be, Cody Waitman to play more regular minutes, Lewis Butler to keep going. I'm astounded at how young Lewis Butler is and how well he does, but those guys are how you're going to propel yourself into the top four and their development, because we already know McRae, we already know Bontempelli. English's development is critical, obviously. It's all those guys that will push you from 7th to 4th. And part of that is also the game plan. So, I guess that's really my final words is keep the development, push some games into some younger guys, move out some of the middle that we've spoken about, and, come out with Jamara, and then make sure you've got 4 good key posts on the ground, and top 4 awaits you.
Totally agree, mate. And that's probably going to wrap us up.
That's it. So thank you everyone for listening, and to everyone in Victoria, I hope you've enjoyed a beer or a beverage of your choice to celebrate our freedom, and to the other areas of the country, Queensland, New South Wales, Northern Territory, South Australia, West Australia, ACT and Tasmania. I hope you can celebrate with a beer with us as well. We're very much feeling a great sense of relief down here. So well done, Victoria, again. And I can't wait to talk about the West Coast Eagles next time, Johnny.
Sounds good, mate. I'll chat to you all soon. Bye.
If you constantly worry that the worst is going to happen, you're not alone. 1 in 4 Australians will experience anxiety. Know when anxiety is talking. Visit Beyond Blue to start a life beyond anxiety.